The debate over freedom of speech in the U.S. has reignited. The state of California now at the forefront of the disagreement. Two right-wing rallies were cancelled over the weekend, reviving calls to impose legal regulations to control hate speech. And as rhetoric on both sides of the country's political debate is escalating, it's not clear who's going to be affected, as Samira Khan reports.
Banning or canceling right-winged rallies and even events featuring conservative speakers has become pretty commonplace within the past few months here in the U.S. Most recently, organizers were compelled to cancel two rallies, one in San Francisco and the other in Berkeley, after facing heavy pressure from rival protesters and local authorities. Such demonstrations, often attracting neo-Nazis and white supremacists, even when organizers claim they disown those radical participants, have been shut down in opposition to hate speech. Earlier this month, the free speech rally in Boston was labeled a white nationalist gathering, despite denials by the event's organizers.
We don't need this type of hate, so my message is clear to this group. We don't want you in Boston. We don't want you in Boston Common.
Now, with hate speech accusations being thrown around, the U.S. remains the only modern democracy in the world without a legal definition of hate speech, resulting essentially in the term coming to mean, I don't agree with this speech. U.S. also happens to be a signatory to international human rights conventions that require member states to declare hate speech or the dissemination of ideas based on racial hatred a criminal offense. Whether these speakers and rallies fall into that category, however, is largely subjective. So, where do we draw the line? And if the U.S. does eventually take a legal stand against hate speech, would it not strike those accusing others of being white supremacists?
Speech doesn't equal violence. Violence means that you're actually using force, a threat of injuring somebody, a threat of killing somebody. That, to us, is violence. A business that chooses to support hate groups might, for example, find that its customers go elsewhere. So there are inherent checks and balances in the free market of ideas. So I don't think this is a government matter at all. I don't think the government has either the moral authority, nor does it have the ability to handle this.
But as the battle between free speech and hate speech rages on, U.S. lawmakers are left with a dilemma. Uphold free speech while protecting hate speech, or strike a balance like the rest of the modern world in protecting free speech, but within certain reasonable limits. The fact remains that until Congress passes legislation that protects its citizens against hate speech, the war of rhetoric will only escalate, as both sides will defend their right to free expression, but will also use hate speech as an excuse to shut down the other side of the spectrum. Samira Khan, RT, Washington, D.C.